Hey everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Origami with Owlbears. I am your favorite Dungeon Master DM Andy, and today I'm going to build scatter terrain for Gaslands. Alright, the first thing I did was cut down a single corrugated piece of cardboard. I'm going to smear white or PVA glue all over these and take a wet paintbrush and smooth everything out and coat them in sand. Now these take a little while. Because I'm using PVA glue and then later I'm going to use Mod Podge and black paint, these scatter terrain pieces take a lot more drying time than a lot of the things I've done lately. I'm going to take some big tongue depressor style popsicle sticks and I'm just going to score one side and then snap them. They'll break pretty clean, so you don't have to worry about frayed edges or cleaning up that side. And then I'm just going to eyeball it and score the other side. And that will give me my sign that I'm going to place on this base. To keep things cheap, I'm going to use drinking straws as the poles in the ground to hold up the sign. I just take old straws after I buy a soda or a tea, and I rinse them out in the sink and then throw them in my junk pile. It's always good to have lots of straws laying around. Straws really come in handy when you're doing scratch builds, scatter terrain, or just any kind of gaming pieces. Then break out the hot glue gun, pump a little glue in the end of them, and stick them on your base. Once I got all three of them on the base, I let them cool, and then I went back and filled the rest of the straw up with hot glue to make them kind of solid. And it gives a top to the pipe if anyone's seeing the sign from the back. And once I got everything secured to the bases, all filled up with hot glue, I switched over to Mod Podge and black paint. Now, my local dollar store has these small bottles of Mod Podge, and I find I like buying them more because if you get the bigger bottles of Mod Podge and you're not using it a lot, it tends to dry up and the lid's hard to open. But with these, I go through them so fast, I just throw them away, and I don't feel like I'm wasting any of the Mod Podge. Now, I haven't attached the sign to the base yet. What I've done is I've base coated the sign front and back, and then I masking taped the sign to give it that hazard slash mark, and then I went over it with my airbrush with some yellow paint. Yellow paint doesn't coat very well when you're painting over black, so it did take 3 or 4 coats, which I left out of this video to save a little time. And of course, after I removed the masking tape, a little bit of the base coat of the black came off. So I just took a paintbrush and some fresh black paint and I touched it up so it'll look nice once I attach it. Now that everything's set up, I just used a little hot glue and stuck it to the straws that I made as poles. I didn't leave a very large gap between the base and the sign. When these are next to the cars, they don't need to be way high in the air. Then I set those aside and I moved on to my second scatter terrain piece in this video. I took a brand new box of pencils and I pulled the erasers off. It's nice to use random kinds of pencils. You don't want every eraser cap to be the exact same. So if you notice, some of them have little black stripes and some of them are just solid metal. Once I got them all off, I cut the eraser off and then stuck them in the empty end of the eraser, the little metal cap. Turns them into a perfect little barrel. Now, be sure you leave 1 or 2 of them without the eraser stuck in, because that'll make the top of the barrel look open. The little metal cap is really good proportion size up against a Hot Wheel or Matchbox car. So they worked out really, really well. So I just grabbed my base, my hot glue gun, and I started piling on these little barrels. I just put them on there randomly. I actually stacked them up a second level, and I made sure to leave one barrel with an open end laid over on its side, and then I pumped some hot glue running out of that barrel to make it look like an oil spill. Once I got those all on there, I moved over to my airbrush and I base coated the whole thing black. I had originally base coated the base black, the scatter terrain base, and then went ahead and painted it brown, but this just adds to the thickness and the heaviness of the base. You can skip the step of painting the base brown or whatever color your playmats are. I just jumped ahead of myself. Now, this is my third scatter terrain piece. This one's just a pile of junk. I had this little gas barrel or oil barrel, compressed barrel, propane barrel, whatever it is. So I took it and a few handful of other things, and I just made a junk pile. Here I'm cutting off the knobs on a Lego. I just use my model snips. They come off real easy. And then I took a playing card and I cut it down to size and I made a top for that. And it just made a perfect little box. Like, I've seen people use these for all kinds of things. They work really well. You can sand down those little circles, but it takes forever. It's way easier to just cut them off with your snips and glue some cardstock or just other greeble pieces to it. Now, from here, I wasn't really sure what I wanted to do. I just knew I just wanted to make a junk pile for out in the middle of the Gaslands playing field that the cars can run into and have a collision. So I glued on the tank, I glued on that Lego block, and I found other pieces, like there's a piece of super glue canister, just the little tip. I glued it on like a little antenna. I grabbed some wheels out of leftover pieces of a Hot Wheel. I threw those on there. I threw some more of my pencil cap barrels on there. And then I used some straws with the little accordion bend, the little crazy straw bend. And I glued those straight onto the compressed barrel. Like, cut them down real short. They look like a pipe coming out of the ground, and attached it to that tank that's attached to my base. I just found all kinds of little bits and bobs and just kept stacking and gluing until I was happy with the way it looked. Now, if you don't have a bits and bobs collection like I do, just use bits of pin or broken Legos. There's all kinds of things that you can use if you just take them apart. Spray bottles, the spray nozzle top of a spray bottle has lots of cool little pieces inside of it. There's all kinds of places to resource bits and bobs for your junk bin. So don't throw those things away anymore. Take a minute and look at everything and start tearing stuff apart. You'll find that it really works well in these junk piles, or maybe if you're trying to get even more elaborate where you're building actual models of like robots or vehicles. While I was doing this, I noticed that I just didn't have enough of what I wanted. So I just kept digging through things, trying to think of new things, trying to escape the idea of what something is, because once it's all piled together, the mind, once it's painted, the mind's eye will forget that you're looking at a pen cap or you're looking at a piece of a fork. So just take your time. What's really cool about terrain pieces like this one is this works for other stuff. Not just my Gaslands games. This works for 40K or other sci-fi games. This works for Kill Team. This works for all kinds of situations where there's like a junk pile off to one side, or there's just stuff in the way, like orc terrain. This thing looks great next to a bunch of 40K orcs. Once I've got it all set up and let all the glue dry, it's back to the airbrush to base coat everything black. Once I got everything base coated, I let it dry and then I base coated again. I found that the metal caps, the paint will rub off real easy. So you're going to want to give those small metal cap barrels a second, maybe even a third coat. Just do whatever you can to keep the paint on there. Now, I kind of did almost a slap chop method without the zenithal highlight. I just chopped away at it with silver paint, kind of an overbrush, and then a little bit of dry brushing with the silver paint. And then I went back with some red, some blue, and some green, and I just hit a few spots to give it highlights. All right, let's look at a few glamour shots. Let's take a good look at all this scatter terrain for Gaslands. And I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Remember, I am your favorite Dungeon Master, DM Andy.